And I will say hello and welcome to this, our fourth, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen, fourth webinar, where we hopefully will be able to give people some help and advice on the latest revised plans, the third set of plans that our friends at Amazon have decided to put in for the council, and that we've basically got to go through all 45 documents they actually have amended. And hopefully we've found some interesting corkers in there. So the plan for this meeting is as follows. Let me just click on my PC. So we are recording and we are starting now, and I'll show you the agenda. In reality, I'm going to do the quick intro, which I've done. I'll say hello from Save Our Spen. We are planning to show you what the applicants have said are the changes from their last submission. And they actually have said that there are about 9 changes, so we'll go through that. Then we'll go through some of the issues and discrepancies in those plans that we've found. And then we'll go through the parts of the local plan that we still believe that the plans don't conform to, so that you can at least put those into your objections. For those of you that haven't yet written objections, for those of you that have, write some more objections. The more the merrier. We're over 1,600. Aren't we, objections? So we could make it to 2,000 people that act. So let's move on then. And I'll apologise if I have to stop every so often to let people in, but at the moment we're fine. So as I said, we've effectively got the third submission of revised plans. They're all on the portal. It took them a while to put on the 11th of November, they put another document, and that document was there, sort of another traffic report, which actually was eye-opening, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But let's look at the 9 changes that they have said that they've made in the plans. And the 9 changes are as follows. The first 4 are quite boring, and they don't actually make that much difference to the plans at all. They're mainly put in for the benefit of of Amazon. They're not to be put in for our benefit. They're changing the retaining wall. They're making an amendment to the retaining wall. Great. They've had to do that because they've had to change the Whitehall Road junctions and the Whitechapel Road junctions. So they've made an amendment to that. They've made amendments to the internal road, again, for that purpose. They've made some minor lighting adjustments, again, because they've moved the road slightly. They've had to move the lamppost slightly. And then they've made some minor drainage adjustments. But as I said, they really aren't material, and they don't make any difference to the local plan or anything, any of the things that they abide by or don't abide by. The bigger amendments, yes, they have made some amendments to the Whitehall Road junction, and they're talking about realigning the Whitehall Road junction. If I show you the actual plan itself, so what they actually have done, because it looks very, very similar to the last one, is that they've moved the road slightly to allow lorries to turn, because that's what Kirklees Highways requested from them. And because of that, they've had to actually move that pathway and also get rid of some of the car parking spaces. So they've done that. But realistically speaking, the thing that they haven't said when they've said that they've made this modification is that they're going to apply for an extra modification that will affect us all. They're actually going to ask to reduce the speed limits on Whitehall Road. So from Chain Bar all the way to Beardsworth, it's going to be a 40 mile an hour, or they are asking for it to be a 40 mile an hour speed limit. And then from Beardsworth all the way to Wyke, the entrance to Wyke, it'll be 50, then going back down to 40. So effectively the speed limits will be, they're asking to change them. That will take an order to change them. But it's as part of the planning, it's the only way that they believe that they'll be able to do it and make that turning safe. Now that is only because they didn't want to, and they are adamant that they don't want to change this junction into a roundabout, which is what Kirklees Highways asked them to do. And of course, if they made it a roundabout, it would change the priorities. At the moment, with traffic lights at this junction, that means that they'll be stopping cars coming in from Chain Bar whenever they want their lorries and their staff to come out. So traffic could actually pile up all the way up to Chain Bar. If they put a roundabout in here, of course, it would be the traffic from Chain Bar that would have the priority. So I don't know why on earth, I do know why they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it because it'll eat into their site. But of course, it would be far better, and I can see why Kirklees Highways asked for it. But at the moment, they are adamantly refusing it, and they're going for this junction with traffic lights. The one that is more close to most of our hearts is the changes they've made to Whitechapel Road. And the changes that they made to Whitechapel Road, they're trying to appease us all a little bit by saying that they will limit the hours that Whitechapel Road could be used from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. But in exchange for that, they've done a whole load of other things they haven't really advertised. And one of them, or one of the more important ones, is they've actually, this is what the layout of the junction will be like. So this is the exit from the site. This is Whitechapel Road. They're planning on putting a pedestrian crossing here, a token crossing. They're also planning, quite interestingly, to enlarge the size of the footpath. Now, why are they doing that? It makes no sense to us because it stops there and it goes back down to the normal size, and it stops there and goes back down to the normal size. So the only reason they're enlarging it, as we can see, is to give themselves some more brownie points, in inverted commas, that they're turning that bit into a combined footway and cycle lane. But in order to do that, that means they're increasing the size of the footpath to 4 meters. And if they increase the size of the footpath to 4 meters, then they will encroach onto the gas pipeline. And that means that they're going to be building the wall or moving the wall onto the gas pipeline, and the footpath will go over the high pressure gas pipeline, or part of the high pressure gas pipeline, which I can't see Northern Gas Networks allowing them to do. But they've asked for it, and that's what they're saying they're going to be doing in the plans. So this is a big change in this latest plan, that they want to enlarge the size of the footpath and therefore move the wall backwards. They're also, as you'll see in a second, changing their landscape scheme a little bit. And with the landscape scheme, they're saying that they want to put a double hedge behind the wall. So once again, that double hedgerow of beech trees will sit behind the wall, which means, again, it's over the gas pipeline. And the other thing that they want to do, oh, excuse me one second while I allow a few other people in. There we go. I'll let people in again. There we go. Sorry. The other thing they want to do is that they want to increase or put a few more trees, i.e. put a bigger woodland between the cemetery and the gas easement. But they actually can't do that because the gas easement goes directly to the border of the cemetery. So it would be very interesting to see if Northern Gas Networks allows them to do what they're actually asking to do. The problem that we've got is that by putting it into the plans, they're trying to appease the planners without having Northern Gas Networks saying, yes, you can do it. And the worry is that they'll get, or they could potentially get the planning permission and then suddenly be stopped from doing all these things by Northern Gas Networks because they have an easement on that pipeline and they're not allowed to do what they're trying to do. So that is quite an interesting worry we've got. The last change that they say they've made, so the 9th change, is to the acoustic fence. And yeah, from my point of view, you know, they've done me a favor, supposedly, because living here, they're actually raising the size of the acoustic fence to 3 meters. But if I actually look to see where the acoustic fence stops, what happens here with all the sounds of the lorries and trucks going down? You know, they'll still be, that sound will still not have an acoustic fence between it. So yes, they've raised the acoustic fence there, but they haven't done anything across the rest of it. And in fact, it stops there, which if we look at the Whitechapel Road houses, oh, sorry, there we go. You'll see that with the acoustic fence stopping here, all the residential properties will still have all the sound channeling towards them. And the cemetery will have all the sound of the car park channeling towards it, which is really crazy when you think saying the words in their justification. They say updated fencing plan 2-metre high acoustic barrier has been increased to 3 metres high along part of the landscape bund in the southern section of the site to provide acoustic and visual obstruction to the residential properties on Whitechapel Road. Where are they providing visual and acoustic obstruction? They're not. So all of these words are weasel words that seem to be in the plan. And I'm going to hand you over to Sharon, who will now take you through some more of the things that we actually have put into the plans and in their detail of the plans, but have not actually put in their summary because they are quite, worrying. So Sharon, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Dar. So some of the things that we found that have been hidden in there, and one that's quite alarming to us, I think Dar touched on it earlier on, they intend to close the Whitechapel Road entrance between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m, meaning effectively that the night shift, when it finishes at 5 and 5:30 in the morning, will leave from Whitehall Road, not Whitechapel Road. What it also means is they've decided to reduce the impact on the local roads. They'll have a staggered but one shift will have a staggered start. So half will start at 7:30, the other half will start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now that is obviously peak travel time for us. And anybody that knows the school children that walk into Whitcliffe will start walking anytime from 7:40 a.m. onwards. So they're going to be walking down Whitechapel Road whilst this double shift changes. And I think in our newsletter we went into the numbers. I think you could see the numbers, even based on their calculations, which we don't believe are accurate. We're still talking approximately somewhere near 400 cars will be trying to get into the Whitechapel Road entrance between 7:30 and 8 a.m. every morning, probably from about 7:15, maybe slightly earlier, through to 8 a.m, which is, as I'm sure you'll all appreciate, it's a significant number of vehicles, particularly when there are a number of school children and the other rush hour traffic up and down Whitechapel Road. Again, if there's an issue on the M62 or the A58, we all know that Scholes Village becomes that rat run. So we've got a major concern there for the safety of the children going to school each morning. And equally on an evening, it means we're going to have a double shift change. When the day shift finishes, the first day shift finishes at 6 o'clock, and the second shift finishes at 6:30. The night shift starts at 6:30, the first shift of that, second one starts at 7. So we've got double traffic coming in effectively between that hour of slightly before 6 o'clock and probably slightly after 7 o'clock each evening. That is a major concern for us, because I think that it effectively will mean anybody that tries to access Whitechapel Road, well, forget it. If you live on Whitechapel Road, you're not going to be able to leave your house. And if you work and come home between them hours, you're going to struggle to get back on Whitechapel Road to certainly get onto your drive or anything like that. So that is a concern. We also have in the report some conflict as to whether the entrance, the staff entrance, will be operated via ANPR, which, for anybody that doesn't know, that's auto number plate recognition. So they'd have to have their car registration numbers registered with the software that Amazon will use, and that will automatically lift the barrier. The actual latest application, we've seen a conflict. Some say in the reports are saying it's ANPR, some others are saying that it's a fob barrier. So effectively you'll have a pass or a key fob, you'll have to tap it, but which will effectively mean cars stopping, fobbing, waiting for the barrier to go and then to go through. We're absolutely convinced if they go to that method, we will see cars backing up onto Whitechapel Road. So not only are we going to have a double shift where 400 cars are entering and leaving mornings and evenings, we're going to see cars queuing to get into the site as well. So the concern for me on a morning is school children. The concern on an evening is the local rugby club and the local football teams that all train on the pavilion. They train between them hours and later, so they are definitely going to be impacted by that volume of traffic on there. I genuinely think I've got major safety concerns about how that's going to operate. Next slide, please, Dar. The applicant states that it has been agreed with KCH, which is Kirklees Council Highways, that all HGV associated with the proposed development will route via Whitehall Road site access, and will not use Whitechapel Road access unless in an emergency. And I've underlined that because there is no definition in any of the reports about what is deemed as an emergency. Now, for most like-minded people, I think we would say it's a matter of life or death. I strongly suspect that Amazon will say it's an operational emergency. So if there is an issue on the M62 or on the A58 and their HGVs cannot access that site from their designated entrance, they will be diverted to Whitechapel Road. And again, that is another major concern. I mean, we haven't focused too much on the numbers of HGV vehicles that they claim are going to be entering and leaving the site during the day and the night, but simply because we, again, don't believe the numbers. I think they say that, off the top of my head, they say they peak at 37 in an hour. Well, they don't need 89 loading bays or 191 HGV parking spots if they've only got 37 vehicles going in an hour. So I still have concerns as to whether that's accurate. But the definition of emergency absolutely has to be clarified as far as I'm concerned. And even if they were to say it would only be for emergency vehicles in the event of a real emergency, how do we police that once it's been approved? How do we stop a HGV driver making his own mind as to what an emergency is? It's unenforceable and unpoliceable, I think. Next slide, Dar, please. So things that are hidden in the reports. We've talked about in our newsletter. If you've read it, we copied their table that they pulled together for 8 local service stations or HGV parking areas that they thought that their drivers could use if they arrived at site too early or too late. Of the 8 that they included, thank you, Dar. Of the 8 that they included, there's only one that actually provides the full facilities, and that is Hartstead service station. They have made some false claims in there, i.e. that Tesco's petrol station has toilets and is open 24 hours a day. It isn't, and we all know that. It isn't, and it doesn't have toilets. Neither does the Tesco store, by the way, in Cleckheaton. So there is no facilities there for anybody. And apart from that, they don't provide HGV parking. So even if somebody was to go to Tesco's petrol station, where are they going to park their HGV? It's impossible for them to be able to do that. And that same applies for all the other service stations. The only 2 areas that they've designated, and they've classed the 2 parking bays on the A58 as HGV parking bays. They're not only for HGVs, as we all know, because multiple vehicles use that site. So again, you can probably get 3 on either side at a push. I don't believe that that's a fair or reasonable place. And they do say in their reports, by the way, that they will be told not to park there and they'll be sent to the other designated areas. Well, that's Hartstead service station. So if you think of a HGV driver that's driven up to his maximum hours allowances, he's arrived at site being told that it's 2 hours too early, told he needs to go away. He's got to manoeuvre out of that site, back onto the A58, back round Chamber, onto the M62 to the nearest service station. He's got a choice of doing that or a choice of going onto a local road and sitting and waiting for 2 hours. Common sense tells you he's not going to go to Hartstead service station, because he's then going to have to go back onto the motorway, down to Brighouse Junction, to do a U-turn to come all the way back down again, or park on a local road.
Sorry, Sharon, and don't forget that basically at the Hartstead Moor, they charge £29.
They do. Any vehicle on there over a certain amount of time, I think it's 2 hours, are charged £29 for the privilege. I know how this industry operates. They work on such close margins that if you're a subcontractor for Amazon, you will not have the money in the job to pay that £29. It's eating into your profit margin, so you just simply won't do it. So one of the first things to call out on that is that goes against national planning policy framework 109, which clearly states that planning policies and decisions should recognise the importance of providing adequate overnight lorry parking facilities, taking into account any local shortages, to reduce the risk of parking in locations that lack proper facilities or could cause a nuisance. Proposals for new or expanded distribution centres should make provision for sufficient lorry parking to cater for their anticipated use. The most important thing for me to say to you is Amazon and the applicants make a strong point on the fact that every vehicle that arrives on site will have a booking in time. So say it's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they'll be allowed to arrive anytime from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So they're given a buffer, an hour either side buffer. If they arrive outside that, they will be sent away. It's as simple as that. They will not have the ability to allow them into the facilities. Which leads me on to the other thing. They make a strong case for the facilities that they provide for drivers at the warehouse. They do, but they've got to get past that gatehouse first. They've got to have arrived within their specific parking, their specific booking in time. They can't park on the A58 and walk back up and say, I need to go to the toilet, because they will not be allowed on site. For security reasons, they're not allowed on there. So it's a massive shortcoming, and we all know, because we've read sufficient news articles from Amazon sites up and down the country, what actually happens. And so they do not provide sufficient parking. It's as simple as that. So they're in breach of National Planning Policy 109 for that. Next slide, Dar, please. So the VECTOS report says modelling of existing chain bar interchange layout has demonstrated that during all the assessment hours, the interchange is forecasted to operate over capacity in future year assessments without the addition of the proposed development traffic. So without Amazon, it is going to operate. Well, we already know that actually that chain bar roundabout is already over capacity. They have proposed some changes that to the roundabout as part of the development. We are talking millions of pounds for them to be able to do that, and that decision sits with Highways. That report has not been submitted to Kirklees Council yet, so we have still no way of knowing whether Highways will agree to the proposed changes or to this development or not. I'm afraid we can't make a judgment on that because we simply don't know how they're going to go on that case. Next slide, Dar, please. So errors, glaringly obvious one. VECTOS are the traffic experts that Amazon employed to produce the report for this development. They refer to the B3062. That is the road in Bournemouth, and it's nowhere near Cleckheaton. So it beggars belief to me that you know, these reports get past any kind of censor check. And my guess, they've literally tried to duplicate a report from another Amazon development. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't an Amazon application near the B3062 in Bournemouth. I strongly suspect that's where that's coming from. What it does, though, is raise questions as to how accurate any other information is in their reports, and can any of it be relied upon? I don't think it can. So SMR architects say that the Whitehall Road currently provides access to the site. It doesn't. The Whitehall Road does not provide access to the site for this development. Whitechapel Road does. So again, another inaccuracy in their reports. It also claims that the closest settlement to the site is in Cleckheaton, which is just on the other side of the M62. Clearly, to anybody reading that report that doesn't know the area, you would think, oh, there's a motorway between this development and anybody's house. Mm-hmm. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth, could it? So again, is it a lazy attempt for them to try and disguise the actual truth, or has somebody sat at a desk and done this assessment and not actually visited site? Could be a combination of the two. They then go on to say that the acoustic fence extends from the eastern boundary and runs parallel to the southern boundary up to the spine road within the site, covering the decked car park too. Well, it doesn't. Dar's already shown us that it actually stopped way short of that. I think Dar's just flicking back to that now. You can see it actually ends just at the side of Chainbarrow Farm. So it stretches from the well, actually, it doesn't even stretch from the public footpath that runs along the side of the M62. It's short of that, and then stops short of that road. So it's another inaccuracy. They also go on to say that to minimise any potential impact to local ecology, the following mitigation measures have been proposed. So they've limited the lighting column heights to 12 metres around the site. 12 metres, that is a significant size. And they've suggesting some areas, although I don't know which areas across the site, but some of them will have sensors on there. So the lights will only come on when a vehicle or a person enters that specific area. And they say they're required to do that for the health and safety requirements of the development, which is fair enough. But what I'd have to say is that to help local ecology, 12-metre lights are not going to they're not going to improve anything at all. They're still going to light up the place like, you know, Blackpool illuminations, and having flashing lights for vehicles or people entering a certain area, I think is probably going to be worse than a steady, consistent light. So again, I don't know any ecology that would be taller than 12 metres. So I'm not entirely sure that that's anything that they could possibly sell as a positive benefit. Next slide, Dar, please. They go on to say the proposal has made use of the opportunities offered by the site and has worked with the constraints imposed by the site and location. This is demonstrated through the development of the design and reflected in the overall design principle. Well, we go back to what we've said right from the word go, that the local plan states that this site is 10.68 hectares as a developable area in order to protect the residential amenity and to protect the high pressure gas main. Therefore, how can SMR claim this proposal works within the constraints of the site and the location? It quite simply doesn't. I think what Amazon are trying to do here is get the maximum out of that site that they possibly can, with no regard for the site constraints at all. This is entirely driven by their business need and nothing else. And they've said also, which I find quite hilarious, that this will stimulate a positive economic change for the local area. I strongly disagree, because I think the shift times that the staff work in them facilities and the breaks that they're required will prevent them from leaving site and putting anything back into our local economy. They're not going to have time to walk up to Scholes Village and go to any of the sandwich shops up there, or go into Cleckheaton and benefit from anything down there. It's just simply not going to happen. I actually think it'll have more of an adverse effect, because if our town and village is you know, if we've got so many vehicles arriving and leaving, and any passing trade that stops in the village to go to the co-op or the butchers or into Cleckheaton, and they can't get there because there's HGVs parked at the side of the road or anything else, they'll just drive through and find somewhere else that's not quite as congested. So I think it'll have you know, a negative impact on our local economy. Next slide, Dar, please. So Delta Simmons, they make a claim that there will be a biodiversity net gain in their calculations. Well, there is absolutely no gain to be had from this site. The second application had over 30% loss. Then the latest one has reduced that to 19%, and that is on the basis that they've introduced green roofs to the car park and the office block, and they've put panels on the roof of the main warehouse. It could never be described as a net gain. It's an absolute loss. And they then go on to say that in mitigation for that loss, there are three options for the management of land within the control of the developer, purchase of the required compensation value from a habitat bank, a payment of a commuted sum to a local planning authority, or a combination of the above. They go on to say that they have got consultancy on behalf of the applicant that are scanning the whole of Kirklees to see if they can buy a field somewhere where they can offset the loss, the biodiversity loss for this site. I have a major issue with that, because I think that our biodiversity in schools is suffering. I don't see how they can argue buying a field up to 20 miles away or further can compensate for that. I just don't think it can, and I don't think it should be allowed. It is allowed within the rules, but I don't think it's right. One of the planning condition, sorry, one of the national planning policy framework rules are that, you know, development that doesn't produce, again, shouldn't be allowed. And we're aware of that, and we've been told that by several people. However, the previous planning officer that was in charge of this application did say to us in one of our many meetings with her, it's impossible to get a gain from a site of that size. So they, in other words, they accept there's going to be a loss. What they're trying to do is mitigate and try and reduce that loss wherever they can. And by doing so, it means buying a field somewhere else. Next slide, thank you. And just a point to note that it's sneaked in the middle of areas. What was an 18-month construction phase has now gone to 84 weeks, which is approximately 21 months. And I'll remind everybody again that the construction phase, certainly the initial stage of it, will see construction vehicles coming through Scholes Village, which is a conservation area. And we are talking huge vehicles that will be coming through there until they can secure an entrance from Whitehall Road. I don't know how long that will take.
Yeah, in fact, can I just interject on this one? The management plan for the construction basically states that, of course, the first part of it is to strip off all the topsoil. And there's about 115,000 cubic meters of topsoil which needs to be stripped off. They claim that they might be able to use 20,000 of those, which means that there's about 100,000 cubic meters of topsoil that needs to be moved around. Now, a single lorry takes about 20 cubic meters. So if you divide 100,000 by 20, that will tell you how many lorries will be needed to trundle through Scholes Village full of soil. And that's not taking into account the rest of the soil that they are actually going to be importing, because they're going to be importing about 20,000 cubic meters of soil into this thing. And that's all looks like it will be trundling through Scholes.
Can I just add, sorry, Sharon, can I just add, from a safeguarding point of view for the schools, this is horrendous. You know, 2 years pretty much of construction and walking to school with wagons everywhere. It's a safeguarding nightmare, and I don't know how they're getting away with it in schools. Plus, they've said there's a lot of dust, and they have mentioned that they've found a type of asbestos. How do they justify that next to school children and school playing fields? You know, 2 years is nearly the whole of your school life up at Wycliffe. You're only there for three or four. So, you know, I think it's a huge concern. And because it's safeguarding its children, I think everybody should mention it in their objections, because they cannot make that safe for the children. There's no way of doing it. We've seen it down at Barrett's site. They'd care nothing for school time or the school kids. And that's how it will be for nearly 2 years on Whitechapel Road. There you go, Sharon, sorry.
No, it's fine, Judy. It's a frightening thought, and I think until you actually see it, I mean, a couple of months ago they were moving some earth from the Barrett site, and they were using Scholes Village to move, you know, to move that. It was pretty dire, the volume, and nowhere near in comparison. As Dar says, if you take nearly 100,000 tons of soil and divide that by 20, that'll give you an idea of how many vehicles will be leaving the site. You can then double it, because everyone that leaves has to arrive. So, you know, it's two-way traffic, is that.
5,000. Yeah, next.
Yes. 5,000, thank you, Dar.
5,000. I thought I'd do the sum for you.
So here's something that we really want to focus on, and we're going to ask anybody that's not put their objection in yet. We'd really like you to mention this in your objection. We'd really like you to open your objection letter with this statement. So the environmental statement from Delta Simmons, who are one of the main contractors that are instructed by Amazon, have made this following statement: closure of Whitehall Road access between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m, reducing the number of vehicles travelling along Whitehall Road, which is predominantly residential. Now, we all know that that's clearly another mistake that they've made. Delighted that they've done it, though, because that report has now been submitted. So we're saying we're delighted to hear that this is no longer a 24/7 operation, because according to some reports, Whitechapel Road will close from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. But Delta Simmons have said it's going to be Whitehall Road. So is that in addition, or is that a mistake? I think it's a mistake, but I think we should be calling it out and saying we're delighted to hear that this is no longer a 24-hour operation, as confirmed by Delta Simmons in their environmental statement.
And again, everything else they're saying, we can rely on their reports as being factually correct. Well, this is a fact in their report. If we can rely on it for the other information, we should be able to rely on it for this. If we can't rely on it for this, what about the rest of the things they're saying?
And equally, let's not forget that Kirklees Council have to base their decision on this application on the content of these reports. So we've called out already a number of inaccuracies, and these are inaccuracies that we as lay people have discovered in their reports. We're not technically minded, and some of these reports are so technical that unless you're an industry expert, you would have no way of knowing how to interpret them and to understand whether they're accurate or not. If we can call out these inaccuracies on their normal reports, I dread to think what's hidden in their other reports. We have got our traffic consultant is revisiting all 14 documents and more that have been submitted on this latest application, and we're obviously waiting for his final assessment on that. Our planning consultant is also reviewing everything, and he will be preparing a letter in submission as well for all this. And, you know, trust me, we're calling out all these inaccuracies to him as well. So yeah, it's one thing we'd really like to press to you all, if you can, if you've not submitted your application, your objection yet, and even if you have and you feel the need after this evening to submit another one, please make mention of this, you know, and congratulate them on making this no longer a 24/7 operation. Next slide, Dar, thank you.
That's the important thing.
So yes, and that the National Planning Policy Framework states that the right information is critical to a good decision making, particularly where formal assessments are required. And I think if you can add in about the clear error, but we're going to say a welcomed error for Whitehall Road and Whitechapel Road, then you should add this part as well, because the fact is we've called out a number of inaccuracies. They're wrong, and it's crucial to good decision making. The right information, well, it's not right, is it? So I'll just quickly flick through and I'll be able to tell you which, if you wanted to quote. It's National Planning Policy Framework 109.
No, 109 is the traffic, is the HGV one. This is 43.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry, my mistake. 109 is the traffic one. 43, sorry, is the one that states the right information is critical to good decision making, particularly where formal assessments are required. The Delta Simmons is a formal assessment, by the way, as is the SMRI. Well, they all are. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks.
That's it for me, Dar. Thank you.
No, that's fine. So fundamentally, as we can see from Sharon's report and from mine, they really haven't made very many changes that affect the original objections. And if we look at the local plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, there are still quite a few policies that this plan contravenes, and nothing that they've done has changed that. You know, if we look at them in a little bit more detail, you know, LP 51, protection and improvement of local air quality. Proposals that have the potential to increase local air pollution, either individually or cumulatively, must be accompanied by evidence to show that the impact of the development has been assessed in accordance with the relevant guidance. Developments which has the potential to cause levels of local air pollution to increase must incorporate sustainable mitigation measures that reduce the level of this impact. If sustainable measures cannot be introduced, the development will not be permitted. Well, with the greatest respect, they are increasing the level of air pollution. Even their reports show that they're increasing the level of air pollution. Therefore, they are not abiding by policy LP 51. If we look at policy LP 52, this is Kirklees Council, local plan policies. Proposals which have the potential to increase pollution from noise, vibration, light, dust, odor, shadow, blah, blah, blah. They're going to do that. There is, you know, you can read the policy, but effectively there is no doubt at all that they are going to be adding more light, more dust, more pollution, more shadow, more flicker. So that, it goes against that policy, 100%. Biodiversity, Sharon hit upon this. Development proposal will be required to result in no significant loss or harm to biodiversity in Kirklees through avoidance, adequate mitigation, and this is their let-out clause, or as a last resort, a compensatory measure secured through the establishment of a legally binding agreement. So basically, they'll go along and say, well, we're going to buy some extra land, and you know, and that's it. So they'll buy some land in South Kirklees, and that will offset the biodiversity reduction in North, you know, in Skulls Village. Next, trees. The council will not grant planning permission for developments which directly or indirectly threaten trees or woodland of significant amenity. There are trees on the site that have tree preservation orders on them, TPOs. I'm sure that you can't get any better than woodlands of significant amenity if they've been given a TPO. They're now allowing them to get rid of that and chop down those trees. And in fact, as I have said before in previous webinars, part of those trees are actually in the corner of the site where they don't actually need to be chopped down, but they're insisting on chopping them down. And unfortunately, the Kirklees trees people are actually saying that it's okay for them to do so. Landscape. Proposals should be designed to take into account and seek to enhance the landscape character of the area. How does a square box sat on the top of a hill enhance the landscape character of Skulls Village Conservation Area? Design. Good proposals should be at the core of all design. The form, scale, layout, and details of all development respect and enhance the character of the townscape, heritage assets, and the landscape. Well, how does a building that's about 80 times the size of its closest, largest, you know, neighbor enhance it and has the same scale? And they provide, and they also say they provide a high standard of amenity for future and neighbouring occupiers. So they should provide amenity for the neighbouring occupiers. I don't think there's anyone on this webinar that actually feels that they are providing any form of amenity. Let's move on. Highways and access. New developments will normally be permitted where safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for all people and where the residual cumulative impacts of the development are not severe. Once again, is it safe to have 400 cars going up and down Whitechapel Road in the morning when school children are around and trying to cross that area? Is it safe to have cars backing up? Is it safe to potentially have HGVs and cars backing up all the way to Chain Bar? These are all questions that need to be raised, and that's why we don't feel that that policy is actually abided by. National Planning Policy Framework, HGV parking. Sharon hit upon that earlier. They have to reduce the chance of lorries parking around. By not providing any lorry parking of their own outside of the gatehouse and just saying it's okay because we've got 191 parking spaces inside the gatehouse, well, they've said it themselves. If a lorry arrives outside of their time, they will be sent away. And if they're going to be sent away, where are they going to park? Where are lorries that are going to be taking a boat the next night going to park because they've done their hours? They're not going to park in the site. They're going to park nearby, you know, on the local roads or in Cleckheaton. Master planning. Master plans, and they were forced to do a master plan. Master plans will be expected to achieve the following proportionate to the scale of the development. High standards of design that respect the character of the landscape, heritage, adjacent and nearby settlements, and build development, reflecting the urban to rural transition with appropriate boundary treatment. So they believe that by putting a 15-meter bund, they're actually giving you a rural to an urban transition there. And then make effective use of the site through the application of appropriate densities in terms of scale, height, and massing. Well, again, with respect, 330 meters in one direction, 200 meters in the other direction, and 26 meters up. That is not making an appropriate application of the scale of this building. Noise and light. Well, again, even National Planning Policy Framework talk about noise and light. Again, they are still making lots of noise and they're still making lots of light. Limit the impact of light pollution from artificial light on local amenity, intrinsically dark landscapes and nature conservation. Well, if you look at the field today, you will see it is an intrinsically dark landscape. It won't be once Amazon is there. And the last one that we believe is vitally important is the actual site allocation itself in the local plan. If you look at the local plan, the net developable area is 10.68 hectares. 10.68 hectares, they are asking to develop almost the whole site, which is 25.53 hectares. And what's most interesting is that that reduction was put in by the planning inspector. And it's quite an interesting figure, this 10.68. We've been sat racking our brains as to where the hell did she get that figure from? And if we actually look at the site itself, and we draw a line that goes along the footpath, along the motorway, along the Spen Valley Greenway, and along the A58, that is precisely 10.68 hectares. So we believe that we know where she got the 10.68 hectares from. And unfortunately, because she didn't write it, Kirklees Planning are saying, no, it's okay, we can decide. Whereas we believe that originally the whole idea of the local plan was that the lower part of the field is the part that would be developed. And it should, you know, all of the rest of the field should have been left as a landscape buffer and to protect the gas pipeline, which it would, and it would then have followed the constraints from the footpath as well. Because by doing that, the footpath can stay where it is. Whereas anything that they do to build the building will stop the footpath from being able to be built, and they have to divert that. As you guys will know, you know, those that follow us, they're diverting the footpath to go all the way around the site. So high levels of noise and air pollution along the M62 motorway, high levels of noise and air pollution along the A58 motorway.
And also, Darry, it's worth adding that if they were to develop on that 10.68 hectares, then biodiversity.
Absolutely.
You know, we wouldn't be looking at a loss. I don't believe.
No, you wouldn't. And they could afford to put suds in. You know, instead of having the drainage underground, they could afford to put lakes and things like that, so they could have overground water, which again would improve the biodiversity phenomenally.
Correct.
They could, you know, they could afford to put roundabouts. They could afford to put the soils. They could afford to take the cut and fill it on that land. So it would make a huge difference if they followed the local plan. They could then abide by what they were supposed to do.
And it's also worth remembering the original master plan that was drafted for this site at local plan stage did include leaving the footpath exactly where it is. It is a heritage trail. You know, we know that we've looked at maps going back to 1854, was it now that we found? 1842, sorry, I stand corrected, where we saw, you know, that footpath was in place then. So, you know, it is right to give it the status of being a heritage trail.
Yeah, it will have been there a lot longer than that. So the maps don't go back further, because the Whitehall Road has been a road there since Henry VIII's time at least. And the Whitechapel Church has been around since the 11th century. So a pathway from the Whitehall Road to the Whitechapel Church has been on that field for years. You know, we're talking potentially 500 years.
So a while ago, we spoke to the planning officer at the time, and she said, what I need to look at is, are they trying to get too much out of the land? And I think everything we've looked at tonight shows they are trying to get too much out of the land. There is no buffer between their light pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, and us, our children, general school children, and the properties. There is no buffer because they're literally taking every inch of the site to develop it and tarmac it. And that's the question the council are supposed to be asking themselves when they look at this application. I'm aghast to think that they could look at this application and think that the answer to that is no, they're not trying to get too much out of the site. This is ideal. Wouldn't everybody just want to, you know, live next door to it and send their children to school next door to it? And the answer is they wouldn't. You wouldn't put an industrial park in the middle of a residential area, and that's all this will do. We'll change our area A58, anybody living on Whitehall Road, anybody living in Scholes, and anybody living in the bottom of Cleckheaton, it will become an Amazon industrial estate.
Right. Thank you for that. Well, we are now at the point where we are very happy to open the floor up to whoever wants to actually contribute or talk. What I will ask you to do, at the moment you are not able to unmute your mics, but you are able to actually press either the reactions button on your phones or the ... button and click to raise your hand. So there's a button to raise hands. When you do, I'll be able to see you, and then I'll choose you in turn to actually ask you to unmute your mics. So if anybody's got questions, please raise your hand now. And
Dar, can you explain where the reactions button is on screen?
yeah, it should be, if you go down, if you're on a laptop, go at the bottom, if you move your mouse right down to the bottom, you will get the word reactions appear. Okay, if you're on a phone, then it's a the ... button that gives you the ability to raise your hand. And I've already got somebody asking to raise hands. Yeah, Teresa Jones. So I will, in fact, there's a number of people asking now. So let me do that. I'm also, by the way, John, I can see that you're here. So I'm going to actually allow you to unmute as well, because you might want to actually respond to some of these things. So I will ask John to unmute, and I will ask Teresa Jones. There we go. You should be able to now unmute your mic and ask a question.
Thank you. We were just having a look at the Vectos report on transport, and it refers to lots of different sites, but I don't know what those sites mean. It talks about site H69 and also site E1831. Does anybody know what those
Yes, we do.
numbers mean?
Yes, they are allocations in the local plan. E1831 is actually, or was, the local plan allocation for this site itself. It's now become ES6 once it was approved, but E1831 is the allocation there. HS5, I can't for the life of me remember exactly where it is, but that is a housing site in the local plan. Now, it might be one that's either been approved or not approved, but it's a housing development site. It could be the Barrett's one, but I think that was HS7. So I'm not sure, I would have to look it up.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, can I ask Kaz, I believe you wanted to ask, so let me ask you to unmute.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was actually at the meeting. It was a public meeting where Katie Childs, I believe her name was the chair of the committee that agreed to take this field out of Greenbelt. And subsequent to that decision, on public display, there was a map showing the, is it 10.5 acres that could be developed. But you're saying there's nothing written down, but it was on public display in Dewsbury Town Hall, because I've actually got a copy of that map. So
you have a copy of the map?
Understand why you're saying it wasn't written down.
Sorry, Kaz, did you say you've got a copy of a map that shows you where that 10.68 hectares was?
Yeah, it was on public display because it was an amendment to the original decision. I mean, I'm sure you probably got it yourself. But
No, we don't.
No, we don't, Kaz. So
well, I think it's still my old computer did crash, but I think everything's been saved, so I'll try and find it.
that would be fabulous, Kaz.
Very,
Thank
very
you.
helpful, because
I have got Jude's. I think I've got Jude's email. I've got somebody's email.
If you send it to the Save Our Spen email, Kaz, we'll all get it then.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
But it, you know, you're saying there was nothing written down, there were no minutes of that meeting. I just can't understand that. I know there were a number of people from the Civic Society who were there as well, and I believe our councillors did arrive as well.
Yes.
So, you know, maybe they'll remember. But
Can I just clarify exactly what we know? You are absolutely right that there was a discussion that said that it should be reduced to 10.68 hectares. That's written down, it's minuted, and it's actually stated categorically that she requested that reduction. What she also said was that the location of that 10.68 hectares could be decided at master planning. What she did not say was that the size of that 10.68 hectares could be changed. But Kirklees are saying, no, it's okay, master planning can allow the size to be changed. If you have a map that shows that they categorically showed the 10.68 hectares, that is worth its weight in gold on this.
Well, I don't want to get you excited because I might be mistaken, but I will send it to you and then you
Please,
can see.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Right. Anybody else want to ask questions? I don't have anybody else with their hand up at the moment.
Have we got something in the chat there?
Anyway, oh, sorry. HS5, oh, it's Fenny Bridge is what it says in the chat.
Benny Bridge, yeah. And could you mute your second laptop?
My second laptop is muted.
Oh, right, okay.
There is no, it doesn't have a speaker anyway, so no, second laptop's muted.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else want to say something? You're being very quiet. If people are not able to actually raise their hand, then write something in the chat and I'll let you in. So it's really up to you. Oh, we've got Kaz again. So yes, let's ask you to unmute then, Kaz. Off you go. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. These things that we've found, when it says it's going to the planning committee, is it the same old people on the planning committee? Like, do I mention somebody's name? Carol Pattison, who seems to agree with everything we don't want. Is there any way that there can be a little bit more objective decision making?
The strategic planning committee is a reflection of who's been voted in around the area, so we have no control over it, and it is literally, it represents the parties that are elected in the area, so that is, it's a non-negotiable. We can't request any change.
There are three Labour plus the chair is Labour, so that's 4. Then there's 2 Conservatives and 1 Lib Dem. That's basically, so it reflects the exact voting. That's how they've done it this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I think Lorna might want to speak. I can see her waving a hand.
Oh, right, let me just, sorry, Lorna, let me just do that.
How can you see that, Sharon? Because I feel like I can't see these.
Okay, well,
I think you need to alter your view, Jude.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yes, Lorna.
It was just a small question, really. When I go back to that table where it was showing where the services would be, there was one named as the Whitehall Service Station, BP Whitehall Service Station.
Yeah.
Now, where's that?
Just give me 1 second and I'll try and find if I can. Just 1 sec. I can only go by what they've said. So let me just try and see if I can.
I'm wrecking my brains trying to think where it might be.
Well,
Yeah.
looking at the distance, it ought to be the one near Reedman's in Birkenshire.
In Birkenshire, I think you might be
But
right.
That is not a BP one.
No, it's not.
The only BP one is way going towards Halifax as you go up the hill opposite the entrance to Shibden.
Correct.
Park.
Shibden Park. Yeah.
That is definitely a BP Whitehall service station.
But it's definitely not 3.5 kilometres away.
No, it's definitely not. But they probably have toilets, whereas the one at Birkenshire doesn't. But there would be nowhere to park a HGV anywhere near it.
That is the map that they have given in their site, and you're absolutely right. They're saying that the Birkenshire one is the Whitehall service station.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
So that's
Right, so which one is it? Oh, it's Esso at Westfield. That's the one at the Schools and White Junction, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
and they refer to that as Westfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are saying the one at Birkenshire, Lorna.
But the one at Birkenshire is a pokey little thing, I'm sure. There's no
absolutely
toilets
is.
there.
It absolutely is, yeah. I think it's
Definitely no
independent as well. I don't think it's chain.
No, it isn't.
Shows you, I'm afraid to say, it really shows you how little effort they've put into these reports, and yet the council seem to be saying that whatever they say, they have to take as read, and that's the worry that we've got. It really is. Let me
I
just
think
go
we've
back.
got Helen Bell and James
We
King.
have, no, we have, yes. I'm going to allow Helen, you're there, so I'll lower your hand and ask you to unmute, please. Oh, sorry, no, I've gone the other way. Helen, sorry, James, I think you can, sorry, I'm just showing you Helen Bell. Let me just go back to you. There we go. If you should now be able to unmute. Go ahead.
I hope can you hear me? I hope I've unmuted.
Yes, we can.
I've been having a close look at that table as well. And it just appears to me as though somebody far away has done a Google search of filling stations in the locality. And I've looked at each one, and of all those filling stations, there's not one that'll take a heavy goods vehicle.
Yeah,
they're just purely small filling stations. Now, 3 of them will need to be accessed from the other side of the A58 going towards Leeds. And that's Whitehall service station, which, as you say, is tiny. It isn't 24 hours. The other one is Denbrook, which is at the junction up at Tong Street. And the other one is at Westgate Hill. Now that means all those vehicles are going to have to come back on the A58 towards Leeds and go across Birkenshaw Roundabout. Now Birkenshaw Roundabout has just been redesigned, and it's been redesigned to make things safer and to lower pollution. Now it's just increasing it again. Also on that new roundabout, they've redesigned it, and heavy goods vehicles are still having difficulty getting over it. It's been resurfaced or landscaped, and there are big vehicle tracks right across it now.
Wow.
And it's only been open a few weeks. There's school crossing patrol happens there as well, twice a day. So right at the other side, away from Scholes and Cleckheaton, it's going to have an effect because vehicles are going to be delayed because of jams on the motorway, both the M62 and the M1. They're going to arrive an hour or two late. They're going to be redirected to these small filling stations. It's going to cause chaos on the roads quite a way away.
Yes, I agree.
This is the thing we believe, beggars belief that an overseas truck driver can come along to the site, arrive early, be given a plan of you can't come in, go here, and off they go, and they have to travel around the local area to places totally.
To be fair, Dar, that would be the same for any HGV driver, because unless they're familiar with the area, and the vast majority won't be, they are going into unknown territory when they're sent to any one of these service stations. They would set off, for argument's sake, up to the Whitehall Road service station, having no regard or no awareness of the roads they're going to travel to get there and the facilities that are available. If they rely on this table, they'd be going expecting to find a toilet.
And parking. And if they're going to try and get to Denbrook service station up on Tong Street, their sat-nav will take them through Hunsworth, East Byley, and then join the queue to get onto the A650.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, just passing more schools, more school crossings, and just generally making
roads that are not built to take HGV vehicles.
Yes,
It's no surprise that they haven't yet presented the road safety assessment, and that is a document that is currently missing from all these. There is no RSA, there's no road safety assessment being given by the applicants.
And on that note, it beggars belief that this application could be considered without that, by the way, because how can anybody assess whether is it a safe proposal without that? For me, that is absolutely fundamental. But I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe this application could be considered without it. That could be submitted afterwards.
Yeah, there's an indication that they will try to make the safety report a condition to provide it. Well, I think when you've got 1,600 objections, pretty much all of which mention traffic safety as an issue, I don't know how the council can justify considering this application for approval without the safety being paramount and forefront of the application decision.
I can't disagree, Jude, and I think more so for me, I'm sure for the vast majority of us on this call, the safety is absolutely, you know, the most concerning issue here. So how they can assess an application and potentially grant permission for something and then accept the safety report is just beggars belief, because for me, you know, you're making a decision without all the facts in front of you, and that can't be fair. James King's been waiting a little while, hasn't he? Bless him.
I'll ask you to unmute, James.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. I've got two questions. Firstly, they've put all these petrol stations and everything and Tesco's down in here. They not have to get permission. I know they're not suitable, but do they not have to get permission from these places before they send HGVs to attempt to park there?
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
You would think so. Yeah, I agree. But you know, they're basically, what they're trying to do is tick boxes so that their planning application passes. And this is one of the boxes they're ticking or trying to tick. Look, we have managed to sort out the problem with HGVs arriving early and late. Evidently, they haven't. We can all see that. Let's hope planning see that.
Yeah.
Do the filling stations know that they're mentioned on the plan?
I'm sure they don't.
Is it worth approaching them, because they may object to the plans? They won't want HGVs turning up expecting to park and use their toilet facilities.
Good idea.
Yeah. Good shout.
Yeah.
James, did you have a second question?
Yeah, I was just wondering. How it was going with Victor, the new planning officer. I know Kate seemed to be quite engaging from what you guys have said, and obviously seemed to challenge the developers a lot in some of their reports. I just wondered how Victor was getting on and how engaging he'd been. And
Victor has been to see us on site, and we did take him for a trip around the site about 3 months ago, 3-4 months ago, wasn't it? Yeah, we took him around. He was very interested in the drone footage so that he could see what was seen and where it was seen from a landscape. So we sent him that. He's actually been a little bit proactive. He told us about the fact that the applicants were going to be there. But the problem that Victor's got is that he's now been left with all the big developments in Kirklees. So he's responsible for the Riverside development at Dewsbury, the Chidswell development, and there's another big one that he's doing, plus the Amazon one. So he's not, you know, I'm afraid to say that, you know, we can't say that every email that we've sent him has had an instantaneous reply, but he's not been horrendous. You know, is there anybody else want to add to that?
No, I don't think there's anything more to say, Dan. I think you're right. I think he was engaging when he came to site. He acknowledged some of the concerns that we raised, and, you know, accepted some of the, I suppose, puzzled and questions that we'd had. No, I find him quite engaging. He does go quiet, but when, as Daz explained, considering the number of developments that he's you know, the case officer for, I can imagine his workload is ginormous.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, James. I've got Colin would like to say. I will ask you to unmute, Colin. Colin, are you on?
Got it.
That's it. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Okay, just three quick ones. First of all, I'd love to see a couple of 40-footers trying to get into Tesco car park in Cleckheaton. That would be a funny afternoon. The other thing is, I don't know whether anybody's been on the Kirklees website about the letters going in, but I haven't seen anything posted. I only went on a couple of days ago, but I've not seen anything posted since the 17th of November. So that doesn't seem to be updated, because I wrote quite a long liturgy, and that hasn't come up yet. I don't think I said anything abusive on it, but now the third thing, and I'll be brief, is, has anyone considered the development at Blue Hills Farm at Birkenshaw and the concerns about the traffic problems around that roundabout and the congestion going down to the chamber.
Right. I can answer what's it called, your second question with regards to, sorry, just remind me, I've lost my train of thought. Your second question was?
About the update on the website.
Right.
Please.
Yeah, we understand that they have currently got a backlog. Okay.
Oh, forgive me. You do surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. But they have been, what they have been prioritizing is any of the consultee reports. So those have been going on. Public health was put on, I think it was yesterday morning. What's it called? Yorkshire Water has been put on. None of them are of any worth. They're all saying it's the, our previous objection, our previous consideration goes. So the important ones, the ones that we are waiting for are of course Coakley's Highways and the environmental people. They're the two that really are the ones that take the longest time. But they have been updating consultee reports, i.e. the statutory consultees. But yes, you're absolutely right. Neighbours' reports, neighbours' objections have not been going on for the last few days.
Well, may I recommend people read mine, because it was quite pertinent to the day I posted it. The next day, the junction at the 26th of the chamber was blocked for half a day.
Yeah. Well, the question is, would that constitute an emergency? And then would Amazon be allowed to send all their HGVs past Whitechapel Road?
That's please read that post when it goes on, because I only spent about 20 minutes on it, but I found it quite amusing. But I'm that sort of person.
Perhaps, Colin, you'd like to email it to the Save Our Spen website, web address, email address.
If I can retrieve it, yeah, I would do. Yeah, certainly.
In answer to your Berkenshaw one, I don't think any of us have done anything on that. Unfortunately, we have a very large application that we are considering, so we really haven't looked at many of the others.
No, but very simple. I got it by accident. I just sort of went on, as you go on and you have to put the numbers in. I just saw this one and I thought, Berkenshaw, they're trying right next to Blue Hills Farm. They're trying to build, I think it's 97 houses.
Yeah.
I thought it was about 122, Colin, but I could be wrong.
Well,
I could be wrong. It's somewhere in between that, isn't it?
Me too. But of course, that is going to cause something of a problem with that roundabout. And they're doing exactly the same as they're doing with Wycliffe Road. They're trying to reconfigure the roundabout and the access road. And I can't quite make out whether trying to take out the part of the farm or not. But of course, the locals are not as well organised as you superb people. All they're complaining about is access to doctors and schools. But
right, okay.
Of course, but the day I went up to Blue Hills Farm about a week ago, there was a traffic jam from the roundabout at just below Berkenshaw, where that new big pub is, right down to the chamber. And I thought, can you imagine what happens when all these trucks suddenly can't hit their time slots on the M62? And we all know what it's like there, but you look at sometimes in the morning, even as I drive down from Scholes to Cleckheaton, it's blocked. Now, a guy in a truck trying to hit a time slot is going to be stuck there for half an hour. What does it matter? But there's 3 guys behind him in the same situation, and it just blows my mind. In fact, I will send this thing to you, but it just basically said, please listen to national and local radio, because you are listening to the most famous stretch of motorway in the country, from junction 23 to junction 28, the most famous of which is junction 26. And the next day it was on the radio and it was blocked for half a day. And I said, oh, better still, don't listen to the radio, go and stand on a motorway bridge.
Watch, yeah.
That's me, thanks. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
very
Colin.
much. No problem.
Teresa, I noticed you put a message on about a photograph of the blockage at Chamber. Would you mind emailing that photo to us, please? And would you object to us using it?
Sorry, let me.
Thank you.
That's great. Right, I've got two more. I've got Maeve now, Maeve Barraclough. If you'd like to unmute, please. Maeve? You there? No, she doesn't seem to want to unmute, so I'll let Kaz. Kaz, do you want to unmute?
I think Maeve's unmuted now. Is she?
Oh, is she?
Yep,
Sorry.
she has.
Yeah, sorry, yes, she has. So, yeah, we'll wait. Go on, Maeve, go ahead.
Can't hear you.
No, we can't hear a word. Nothing. You there? You're now unmuted, but.
Alternatively, if the microphone's not working, go to the bottom of your screen. There should be a chat box that you can click on where it says chat, and you could just type in what you'd like to ask.
I'll ask you to do that, Maeve, if you don't mind, and I'll let Kaz come in. So, Kaz, are you able to unmute, please? Yeah, there we go.
No, just quickly, Colin mentioned the houses at Blue Hills causing a congestion, but there's also 300, well, Kath will correct me if I'm wrong, 300 houses to be built on what is called Merchant Fields, which is just where the traffic lights come out of Hunsworth Lane. So that's another, if you say every house has got 2 cars nowadays, that's another 600 cars. Plus your Blue Hills cars, you know, it's just ridiculous.
Plus the 122 up at the top of Whitechapel Road.
Exactly.
Plus the Oakenshaw development hasn't even been tried or tested yet on Chamber, so we've no idea what's coming from that.
Yeah, you're right, Jude. And I think what's important about the Oakenshaw development is it's all speculative. None of it has been purpose-built for any end user in mind. So they've based the traffic assessment for all that development on anticipated user and anticipated volume from anticipated user. So it's all guesswork effectively. And so, you know, we've really got not much of an idea what that's going to look like.
Plus,
and you're right, Lorna. Yeah, the park and ride plans for future development.
So people can drive here, park here, around Chamber. And then
well, the idea is that it takes away the traffic off the M62, and that's the whole. So therefore, in admission, they're already clear, you know, confirming what we already know, that Chamber and M62 is over capacity.
Maeve has asked a question. Are Kirklees aware of the inaccuracies spoken about at the beginning of this meeting? All our objections will include them, and we're hoping all yours will too. We haven't raised them specifically, have we, Dara? I think we've be asked, like, what's going to be correct, you know, which one are you going to believe? But the fact is we don't have the time, and also basically this is the final submission as far as we're concerned. These reports should be relied upon, and they've been given to us as accurate reports and to the planning department. So where there's inaccuracies, the council will have to call them out themselves. They will be in our objections, but we haven't given them too early, because where we've done that before, you know, we've just had bits and bobs of replies where the applicant thinks that they can just say, oh, well, we've sorted this out, or well, we've dealt with that. And actually, there's just so many. They all need to be looked at in the round with the entire application and say, is this proper due diligence to support an application of this size that could have such catastrophic impact on the local amenity? And the answer is no. And we're hoping the council will see that the answer is no.
And I think it's fair to say, Jude, you're quite right, but you touched on it earlier when you said that previously, when we've called out the inaccuracies too early, the planning department have written to the applicant and sought clarity on it. And actually, we don't want them to have that opportunity for a third time. We think this application should be assessed on its current proposal and the current submission, and we then therefore question how it can be assessed based on the number of inaccuracies in there. And so yes, Judy's right, all of our objections will be calling them out, and in fact, if you refer to our latest newsletter, we document them all pretty much in there, and actually probably will form the basis of quite a lot of our objections. You know, we'll all make them personal because different things matter to other people more important than, you know, they're more important to some than they are for others, depending on where you live and what your outlook is. But we will certainly be calling it out to them in sufficient time, we hope, for them to be aware of them, but hopefully not enough time for the applicant to address them.
Yeah, and the reason we're only just making them public to everybody is because, and not me actually, I can't take the credit, Dar, Ian and Sharon and Matthew took charge of reading all the reports, and without reading them all, you can't make sense and pick out the accuracies, and with 44 of them, that literally got done just before we sent this letter out, the newsletter out, because there was so much to read, so much to compare from what different people had found, that I can't imagine any of the planning department have managed to read the documents from back to front like we have. You know, we've had four people on it 24 hours a day, you know, any spare moment they have for the last 3 weeks since they came out, or 2 weeks, is it?
Yeah, no, it is, that's right. And the bit that was a little bit unfair was, of course, we did say that 44 documents really should give us an extension on the times, and that was one thing that the planning department definitely said, no way, they are not giving any more extensions. So the last date of submission is the 5th of December at the moment for all these plans, and I don't believe that they'll extend it.
And we hope that that deadline stands for the applicant as well, and that after the 5th they're not allowed to submit any more smudge to try and get round the valid points that we have regarding the due diligence that they've put in.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry I'm being a bit rude here, but 2 things. Has the field actually been sold to Amazon? Do they actually own it now?
Not as far as we're aware, we assume they have an option agreement over it, so once they get planning, they will have an automatic right to purchase.
Right, okay. And the second is, you know, we're sat here, we're discussing all this, and it's absolutely wonderful, all the work you've done. But are those people on the planning committee who make the decision? I know the people from our area will know all this, but if you mention it to somebody from South Kirklees or even Huddersfield, they say, oh, what Amazon warehouse? They've no idea about it. They've never heard of it. And are those people going to be as au fait with all the issues, you know, who make the final decision? This is the worry.
Maybe not, but I think there's been correspondence to those that are on the planning committee by members of this community to you know, give an overall view of what they think. They'll be led by the report from the planning department, and unfortunately, I don't think they could read every application they give a decision on from back to front. You know, it concerns our immediate area, therefore we're more interested in it. I wish they could, but currently this Amazon application, if you were to start looking at this, all 3 attempts that they've had at it, you'd need to stay in for quite a while before that committee date.
And I think it's fair to say, and John and Kath are here, and they'll confirm or deny it. I would be surprised if there's any councillor in Kirklees Council that's not heard of this application.
Yeah, I agree. They all know. We've made sure they know.
Yeah,
sure
and you have as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kath.
Chase, I see you've put a comment in. Thank you for that. I'm sure everybody's able to see it, I'm sure. You're quite right. Traffic and road safety and air quality are our strongest concerns and our strongest cards. So yeah, road saturation. Kirklees cycling campaign would be interested in a response on the negative impact on all the walking and cycle levels. Yeah, I agree. It did make me laugh Chase when I saw that they were extending Whitechapel Road and making it a dual pedestrian and cycle lane. And as soon as you get to the edge of the development, you have to get off your bike and start walking because the cycle lane stops. It literally is for the couple of 100 metres on Whitechapel Road that the development covers. That is the extent of the extension on that path. It seems a bit ridiculous.
There it is. So
Yeah.
it stops. So it's a cycle, combined cycle and what's it called? Combined cycle and pedestrian there, but it stops right at the end.
And you're quite right, James. There is a cycle lane directly opposite it.
Yeah.
Whilst we're looking at this plan as well, I mean, the position of that zebra crossing strikes me as ludicrous. You're coming uphill and round a corner just before you get to it, and it's straight opposite the entrance. I mean, I wouldn't want my child crossing there when there's cars trying to get in, out, all the rest of it. You know, why would you put it there?
And we can add in there, Jude, as well, that you can see on the site there is a proposal to add two bus stops on Whitechapel Road, and Amazon are very kindly offering to pay for that, and that will have road traffic information available instantly on there. One is just along from the entrance to the pavilion. It's actually right outside the house, the White House, at the edge of it, and the other is right on the opposite side of the road, in the middle of the pink circle that Dar's got on there.
You've got to think of visibility, haven't you, for that? So if a child's trying to cross the road and a bus has stopped on either side to pick people up, how can they see past to see what's coming up from the motorway bridge, you know, at speed? I mean, we all live on Whitechapel Road, a lot of us on this call, and they fly up here.
Yeah.
So unless that is going to be, you know, proper press the button and it's a red light, I can't understand how that could be deemed safe. But then again, we haven't seen a safety report, so we wouldn't know how they've justified that.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth pointing out as well, Jude, them bus stops, they're selling, you know, they're obviously trying to raise them as being a benefit to the local community. Well, we have bus stops, albeit we only have it on one side of the road, within walking distance of this site.
Cemeteries both sides. Cemeteries and opposite. I get dropped off there every day after work.
Well done, you.
And opposite, it says on the...
But it does say and opposite, but there's not a bus stop, there's not an actual sign at both sides of the road, is there? But my point is, it's within walking distance. But the only people that are going to benefit from these bus stops are the Amazon employees.
And they're not going to be using them because they've got their own private buses put on.
Yes, 4 of them, 4 44-seater buses. Which, actually, if we go back to the point when we talked about Whitechapel Road being closed from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m, if my question to the council would be, if the last shift changes at 7 p.m. each evening, why are we keeping this entrance open till 11 o'clock? It could be closed from 7 o'clock each evening, because according to them, there is going to be no traffic movement in or out of that site because the last shift changes at 7 p.m. each evening. Now, the cynic in me tells me that during peak trading time, they will have people working any hours they possibly can. So there will be shift changes right up to 11 o'clock in the evening.
Where's the bus going to and from? So where does it go?
We don't know where they're coming from, because they basically said that they will decide on where they're going to go based on the staff numbers, where staff need the buses. They're going to just go to Amazon. So those, or are we talking about the buses that are on Whitechapel Road?
I wonder if the question means, you know, into the site, where does it go and then come back out?
The ones into the site, they have in the document said that they will make a decision based on where their employees are coming from, but they haven't actually stated where their employees are coming from. Now, that also goes against all our employees are going to be local, and it's going to be local people.
So, yeah, Cleckheaton, Bradford, Leeds, I mean, that's just, you know, wave your finger in the air.
Yeah,
exactly
anywhere.
Right.
You know, they say local jobs, but the quickest place to get to from that site is Leeds and Bradford. To drive to Huddersfield from there is not that quick on the bus, unfortunately.
No, and you have to remember that if you actually look at how many jobs, and when I did my last objection, I actually checked on Indeed.com how many warehouse jobs are available within a 10-kilometre radius of this site. And at the time that I looked, which was, well, we're talking 3-4 months ago, there were 310 vacancies. So, of course, if they're having that number of vacancies now without Amazon, where are they going to get all these people from? They're not going to be local. They're going to be getting them from all over the place. And that is if they do employ that number of people. We just don't know.
Can I just comment, Dan?
Yeah, of course you can.
On that, during the COVID outbreak, we did some mapping of where people travelled to and from to work. And it was clear in Cleckheaton that a lot of people are travelling from South Bradford. Some from Leeds, quite a few from Leeds, but the bulk of the people who work on the trading estate by the rugby club from South Bradford, they ship in from there. So just gives you an indication of just the geography and the transit patterns there.
Thank you, John. Colin, I think Colin's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'll let Colin ask to unmute. There we are, Colin.
Yeah, just one last thing. I did read everything that you sent me. Thank you very much. And your synopsis has been absolutely excellent, and the job that you're doing is fantastic. I just wonder where we're going from this. What would Ladbroke say?
Right. I got to say, this might be worthwhile for John and Kath to answer in reality. From our point of view, we know that there will be something built on that site. It's been allocated for employment. We think we've got a reasonable chance of it not being this. Okay, there are a lot of things that are against them, but our problem is that we are fighting an uphill battle. It does seem as if Kirklees planning would like to see this coming through, because if they saw this coming through, it would fulfill their employment plans for the local plan. You know, it's about a third, or is it? It's between a sixth and a third of
But
their
they won't,
whole employment.
but they won't come from Kirklees.
Yes, I know. I agree with you. They're ticking the boxes. Yes, they're going to provide that level of jobs. That's what they're trying to do. It's their remit. So we tend to see, it seems as if we're fighting an uphill battle. Our hope is that as we began to feel a little bit with Kate Mansell, that Victor, who will do the presentation to the planning committee, will not be swayed by anything, but will give a balanced view. If that's the case, then I think we've got a very good chance of the strategic planning committee of them actually pushing it, pushing it away and rejecting it.
Well, I think you're doing a superb job. What do you think the time is going to be like?
Well, right, let me tell you, we've got a number of things that are in our favour, of course, because even if the Strategic Planning Committee decided in January or February or whatever, whenever they meet, it could be in December. If they decided in December that they would like to approve this plan, they then have to go for a right-of-way order, a public right-of-way order to divert the public right-of-way. That only requires one objection for it to go to out to a consultation and out to the Secretary of State. So I actually think that nothing will happen here. Even if they approve it for planning, I don't think they'll be able to start doing very much until, well, you tell me, guys. You want to give us a predicted
March. One last question. What is the state of finance, and do you need more money?
Right. The answer is that at the moment we are saving our money in case we have to take this to legal review. That's why we stopped at the traffic report and the landscape report, because we actually felt, and of course our planning consultant will also be giving a speech at the committee meeting that takes that. So that's what we saved our money for. We don't have that much left. We would have had enough for one extra report. But we feel that it might be better for us to keep that money for a legal challenge if and when that comes out, because I think that will give us more of a push. But
And
yes,
also,
more money, please. Absolutely.
Well, I think it, for the 36, I don't know how many are still left, but they should help you. I certainly
Thank
will.
you, Colin. We appreciate it.
thanks, Colin. I think the decision we came to was timing wise, we were very tight on the consultation this time. We couldn't get an extension. So that was part of the reason we got no more reports, because they couldn't have done much in that time. We couldn't have challenged the air testing or the noise testing really in that short period of time. And depending on what comes out from Victor, so Victor will prepare a report so that goes to the committee, and that will be 7 days, I believe, Dad, before the committee.
That's
so once
the
the report comes out and we know what they're going to do, be it approve, be it reject, at that point we decide, right, if they're going to approve, what does our consultant say? What are our choices to challenge? And you know, the money will be used for that. But we don't know what they're going to do yet, so it's just it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. But if we do challenge, we will be begging again.
And what we do know is if we do go to challenge,
I'm sorry, it's the Yorkshireman in me, but what sort of money are we talking about there to challenge something like that?
So I've asked our consultant if he can give me a guesstimate, a best guesstimate, and he's educated, and I'm waiting for him to come back to us on that front. What I can say, Colin, is if so, worst case scenario, if Victor's recommendation is for approval, and we think, right, we need to get all our guns in a row ready for a legal challenge, we'll have a very short window in which to you know, give us a good idea of how far we can go with it. We can go and we can talk to any public inquiry and present ourselves. Absolutely, we can, and we will do that without a shadow of a doubt. But I do think we'd have more weight if we had somebody that was legally qualified in this field to represent us.
And I'd also say, when we talk about legal challenge, we're talking about calling, which is for an inquiry, not a judicial review. So it's a different process, and it's not necessary. We don't just apply for a calling and get accepted. There's a, you know, that's a, what would Ladbrokes think? You've got a chance. They'll only accept so many call-ins a year. We'll either be lucky and they'll think our case is worthwhile, or we won't be. So there's a lot of things to happen. So there's no certainty at all until we see that report and then take advice from the experts that we've paid to give us the advice.
Okay, keep up the fight, guys. I'm behind you.
Thank you, Colin.
Right. I don't think. Oh, Charles has asked what other tactics to oppose this application have been considered by increasing the number of objections. Anybody want to answer?
I would say, obviously, most people have objected, but ask everybody in your household to object. You know, divvy up your neighbours and assist anybody who's not affair with IT technology, because Kirklees really don't like written letters. You know, it takes them forever to get them, let alone upload them. But yeah, just everybody in your household, and send a second objection. Even though you sent a first one, send a second one, making the points we've made tonight, saying, I don't feel anything in these revisions makes any difference to how I feel about this application. And that should build the numbers up. You know, just carry on objecting and raising your concerns, because they have to list them to the committee, and hopefully that will give the weight for the committee to think, this is a lot of people. Hopefully more people objecting than they're offering jobs, I'm hoping, by the end of it.
John, you've raised your hand.
So yeah, just on that, don't forget your social media campaigns. Get out there, share on Facebook, on Twitter, or whatever platform you're on. Share the stuff that SOS are producing. It raises awareness. And people will think, actually, that's the third time I've seen that. I'm going to do something about that, because I completely agree with them. I think SOS have done a smashing job of keeping this in the press. We've tried to support them in doing that. And to such an extent now that the Yorkshire Post are carrying probably most of the articles that the LDR, the new local democracy reporter, is carrying, and it's attracting BBC national attention as well. So well done on that front as well.
Yeah, that's pleasing to hear, John. It's taken us a while, shall we say, to get that engagement, but you know, we're grateful for it.
Sorry, Kaz, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Sorry, I tried to put it on chat, but it didn't say.
Go ahead.
We're talking about employment, but isn't it true that a large percentage are actually robot? You know, the jobs are robotized, and do we have any facts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Amazon have been, you know, they've been very vociferous about the fact that they're trying to do as much automation as they possibly can. The goal is within 10 years to have a fully automated warehouse. For them, there are already fully automated warehouses. Ocado already have a fully automated warehouse, and there's a number in China that are fully automated. They don't have anybody there. Of course, Amazon are trying to put a light on it and say that therefore there will be more jobs for IT specialists and robotic repair people. But how many of those? And I honestly believe, I agree with you, that a building of this size will actually, in the next 10, 15 years, be staffed exclusively by robots. Why would you need members of staff to pack boxes? Absolutely right.
But 2,400 is complete fiction,
Yeah.
really, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Kaz, my take on that probably is at peak, and for those that don't know, the peak season for Amazon, they'll have a few peak times of the year. They have obviously their Prime days twice a year, I think. I'm not an Amazon customer, so I'll stand corrected if I've got that wrong. But as far as I'm aware, they have 2 Prime days. They have Black Friday and, of course, the Christmas. Their peak season ramps up from about August and runs right through to Christmas. If that site handles returns, it will have a peak post-Christmas as well, when people are returning the parcels and the gifts that they don't want. And they have a couple of peaks during the year for their prime times. They will employ anybody doing any hours. So, you know, when they say 2,400 jobs, what would they need to quantify is how many of them are full-time equivalent, because they could be made up of somebody doing 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. You know, they're not equivalent to a full-time role. You're right though, Kaz, under no circumstances will they have 2,400 people working in that facility.
I think we need to bear in mind, and Sharon called it out straight to the face of some of the Amazon representatives stroke agents in Gomersall, that this was 1,500 jobs, I think, when it first came in, or 1,300. Yeah. And as soon as they realised they were up against a serious campaign, they upped that to over 2,000 jobs. To me, it is a manipulation of the planning system, and their excuse for that, what's her name?
Sally Miles.
Sally Miles, yeah.
Sally Mills had the cheek to say to Sharon, well, once we knew it was Amazon that were going to occupy, we had a better idea of the number of jobs that they'd supply. Sally Mills worked for Amazon and has known since the beginning of this, as have Kirk Lees and many, many people, it's, you know, worst kept secret, that this was Amazon. So there was no justification in that they came in at lower jobs. They've literally, you know, if this is a weighing scale, they've just put their weighing scale up because they've added a load of jobs to it. You know, and we're on the losing side of that, trying to get back up.
We've got one more in the chat where Teresa said the warehouse may be automated, but the deliveries in and out will still be happening. So there may be some driving jobs. You may well be right in the short term, but they're actually working on automated truck driving as well at the moment, and trucks that will drive themselves.
And they're offering discounts if you pick up your package from an allocated place. They're offering £7.50 off in places so that you can collect your package. Well, that'll be interesting.
Equally, they've done quite a bit of research into drone deliveries.
They have indeed.
Right. Any more questions? Because we are at 9:45. People
We are. I'm very impressed. We managed to keep 32 of you still interested, so well done. Anybody else want to say anything before we call it a day?
Just thank you all for batting on and doing so much work. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
Thank you
John.
very much. Yeah, absolutely.
And I have to say back to everybody else, we're very, very grateful for all the support that we receive, because without your support and without your fundraising that you've helped us, we couldn't have achieved what we have today.
No, it would have been soul destroying with no support and no comments on the social media and no feedback on the emails. It would have been quite a lonely battle, whereas we feel very well supported. So thank you.
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks very much then, everyone. And hopefully, we'll call it a day. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.